What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Hook One Pod. Hey, we're here at Hook One Bait and Tackle in the studio, as always, but today's episode is going to be a little bit different. So basically what I'm going to do, guys, is we're kind of going to get into it. I'm going to start it like I would any podcast, and then we're just going to roll. I've got the comments here. I'm going to get through my thought process. That's hard enough as it is. And then what I'll do is if I see any questions, we'll go through in between each section. But we're just going to be talking about summer walleyes. So it's going to be a good time. If you guys could share the video, that would be awesome. That's going to be one of the ways to win the rum and the hat. Basically, you're going to have to share this video on Facebook and then head over to YouTube and subscribe if you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're already subscribed, thank you very much. We're Hook One Fishing on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, you can subscribe, but I'll essentially give you guys 2 entries as opposed to 1. So we'll get ready to roll here, guys. If you've got any questions, let me know. If for some reason my audio cuts out or whatever, please let me know. I know you guys will be there for me. I'm going to make sure we're good to go here real quick, and then we're going live. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Hook One Pod. Hey, we're here at Hook One Bait and Tackle in the studio, as always. But today's episode is going to be a little bit different. For those of you guys that are joining us live, we really appreciate you guys joining us. Please let us know how it's going. Leave a comment on the side if you've got any questions as we go. And for those of you listening on anywhere we really podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Pocket Casts, anything like that, as well as watching us on our YouTube. This is basically going to be a Facebook Live event where we're going to go live. We're going to get some interaction from the people. I'll read back the questions out loud so that way you guys that don't join us live will be able to hear us and hear the questions as we go. But we're talking summer walleyes. We are right in the middle of the dog days of summer. We had a little bit of a snippet of fall, and the bite got really good for about 2 days, 3 days here in the river. And now we're back to 95 degrees. We're all sweating. It's humid. And we're back to the dog days. So before we head into fall, I really want to touch on summer walleyes. We're talking the where, we're talking the what, we're talking the how. We're going to talk about baits. We're going to talk about where to find these fish, and we're going to talk about what to look for. Now, as we go on through this podcast, guys, a lot of this information is going to be specific to the St. Clair River and Lake St. Clair. But just like a lot of fisheries, there's going to be some minor differences. Every fishery's got their own different bait, their own different forage, their own different structure. But as we talk about Lake St. Clair, you'll be able to apply a lot of this stuff to other lakes if you're listening, and you're not a Lake St. Clair fisherman, whether it's Lake Erie or Saginaw Bay, or hopefully listening to us somewhere that's not in Michigan. That would be awesome. We're also going to talk about what to look for that kind of sets these things aside from, what sets these bodies of water or what sets where these fish are sitting aside from dead water, essentially helping you guys eliminate a lot of the dead water as we move forward. Then we're going to talk about what. I've got a pile of baits here. I don't think you can really see them, but I'll make sure to hold them up as we talk about them. Get into what makes all these baits a little bit different. Some of these things are just going to help you put walleyes in the boat. Other things are going to help you target bigger walleye, more aggressive walleye, kind of whatever you're looking to do. So we're going to get into that. Before we start, guys, I want to thank everybody that obviously makes this podcast possible. We've got a few really good sponsors and people that work with us. Whitewater Fishing, Papa's Pilar, Cortland Line, braided line made in the USA, and Great Lakes Anglers Co. So for those of you guys that don't know, they work with us. They give us really good discount codes. So this Whitewater shirt here, their nice performance tech shirt, if you want 25% off, you can use our code WWEXUJ5. That's going to be right there in the podcast when it comes out on YouTube. But you can use that code to save 25% off any order on the Whitewater website, as long as they don't have any promotions going on. You can also use the code HOOK110 to save 10% on the Great Lakes Anglers Co. coffee or Papa's Pilar. Unfortunately, we can't do that in Michigan. For some reason, the government locks us down. We can't just be shipping booze everywhere. But that's why we're giving away a bottle here later today. So between the booze and the coffee, it's getting me through the newborn stage with the baby. The coffee especially, guys. Great Lakes Anglers Co. is right there in Saginaw Bay helping all the sport fishermen. So it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So, hey, let's kind of get right into it, guys. So when you're looking for walleyes in the summer, it's tough to find them. The weeds are everywhere. The bait is kind of spread out everywhere. Water temps are pretty regular throughout. Now the river system's always going to be a little bit cooler, and by that I mean right now we're sitting about 4 or 5 degrees cooler. We were over on the Canadian side of the lake the last few days, and it was hitting anywhere from 74, 75 degrees. Whereas you slide in the river and we're getting anywhere from like 69 to 71 degrees. So when you slide into these river systems, especially the St. Clair River, as Lake Huron kind of drains into it, you're gonna find that colder water. And what you're looking for these walleyes when you're in the river system, you're looking for weed beds and weed edges. That's holding that bait, holding that cooler water. It's a place for walleye to hide in the shade. You're also going to be looking for the complete opposite of that, and you're going to be looking in the middle of the channel, kind of where the deepest water is. A lot of the times, that's where you're going to find most of your isolated structure per se. You're going to find a lot of your rocks out there, a lot of your wrecks, especially in the St. Clair River. We got a lot of wrecks and stuff like that. So you'll find a lot of that stuff that the walleye are sitting on, and that's also holding bait. And then you're also going to want to look for some slack water. You're going to look where that current's coming down the river and whether there's a bend in the seawall, maybe a couple long docks that stick out, maybe a building that's sticking out into the water that's going to create that slack current. That slack current's going to create, space for that bait to kind of sit in, that bait to try and relax. And the walleyes are going to definitely take advantage of that. They're going to come right up there, especially in the summer. You guys that fish offshore see it all the time. As minnows are running the seawall, those walleyes are right underneath them. I mean, you could shine a headlamp or a flashlight down, and you can see those fish. Now, when you're out in the lake, you're going to be looking for something totally different. Now, Lake St. Clair, obviously, it still has current, especially the farther south you go, or when you're in the shipping channel, you're going to find a lot of current out there. But you're not going to find current breaks out in the middle of the lake a lot of times. So, you're going to look for something that might create that current break, whether it be a weed bed, isolated structure, whether it's a rock pile, if you can find a washing machine out there. But some isolated structure, maybe like a rock wall or a rock jetty, that'll create some current break. And it's also, you're going to be looking for oh, jeez Louise. You're also I'm sitting here trying to keep up with my notes here, and I'm trying to read all the comments. So you're also going to be looking for deeper water in the lake. Now, the lake is going to typically, especially Lake St. Clair, is going to run really shallow. It averages like 7 foot of water all around. And obviously, when you get these bluebird skies and these super clean water, you're not going to be able to find those walleye in 7 feet of water unless they're buried in a weed bed, which can be hard to fish. So look for those channels. Head out, the south channel, the middle channel, the north channel. Anywhere where that channel is going to bend typically is going to create that current break that's going to hold those fish. The other thing about the channels is up on the edges are going to hold those weed beds where those fish are going to hide. So a lot of the times that's what's going to create, whether you're trolling over the channel, pulling harnesses. We're going to touch on all this stuff, casting. The channels seem to be where a lot of that life comes into play. So it's not a bad idea to really focus on those and then branch out. Because when you're in the lake, it's hard to find that isolated structure. There's definitely wrecks out there, and there's definitely rock piles, and there's definitely structure, but for the most part, it's very barren. For any of you guys that fish the lake quite a bit, you'll know that you could side scan for a long, long time before you see anything at all. So that's what you want to look for as far as when you're in the river and when you're in the lake. And we're going to definitely get more into that with the baits and how you want to target them and stuff like that. Let me just go through the comments here real quick and see what we got as far as what you're looking for. And then we'll dive even farther into it. What tips you got for a summer blues? Man, it's tough, especially for the shore guys during the summer blues. You're really looking for nighttime. I think John nailed it perfectly. You're looking for nighttime. You're looking for that sun to get up. Those fish just don't want to come into shore. They just don't want to come in close to shore during the day. The water's just so clean in this system, and they just have no reason to get right up tight on the seawall until night, because then they'll use that to really pin the minnows up. And the minnows understand that too. So you guys got to think about too what the bait's going to be doing. And a lot of the times during the day, the bait's on the bottom. We don't really think about that too much, but the bait's on the bottom. And we're going to dive into it more, but like especially in the river system right now, those walleyes are feeding on gobies, really small shiners, and crawfish, as well as bugs. So the bug hatchery is kind of done. That's what makes worms so lethal this time of year and night crawlers so deadly, is when those fish are feeding on the bugs. That's exactly what you're replicating. That's what the smell is like. But they're feeding on a lot of crawfish. I don't think a lot of guys realize that, but there's so many rocks in like up close to shore in our system. There's a ton of crawfish. And anytime that we talk to divers and guys that spend a lot of time under the water, like in this fish's habitat, they mention how many crawfish are in the system and how those fish are so opportunistic. Like they lift up a rock and a crawfish goes downstream and there's a smallie or a walleye right behind them, because those fish realize that, if the bait's moving, they're going to be following. They don't really recognize us as a person as much as like, what the heck is that thing? So as they're moving rocks and they're moving stuff like that, those fish are taking advantage of the bait getting swooped down, if that makes sense to you guys. Ed, doing better with bottom bouncers. Yeah, man, bottom bouncers are kind of the way to go. Bottom bouncing, especially in the river system, and we're going to touch on that, kind of how to fish a crawler harness and where to fish them. But a bottom bouncer and a crawler harness is definitely the way to go, especially in the summer. A big reason why is you can cover a lot of water. So in the spring, those fish are really piled up. It's really easy to jig them. You can go through those schools of fish. A lot of them are taking the opportunity in those big schools to just bite the first bait that moves through. Where in the summer, once that water warms up, and again, we talk about the weeds start popping up, the water temperatures start to kind of even out all throughout the system. Those fish, they spread out. And so when you're pulling bottom bouncers, one, a night crawler is one of the best baits you can use in the summer. And two, you can cover a lot more water. I mean, you're moving 2-3 times as fast as you would be if you were jigging. So you're covering a lot more water. We actually had some limits mid-river here, like Marine City, Elginak area, when we had that cold front a few days ago. The guys went out as soon as that warm front came back, and it was much, much tougher fishing. But when that cold front came through, those fish were definitely taking advantage. And we had some limits down in Elginak, and then as well as some really good fishing up here in Marine City, like just south of the launch. So that's really good to see as we continue to move forward. Another thing that you guys want to look for, so aside from like the physical structure in the water, whether it's the weed beds or the edges or the current breaks and stuff like that, guys, whether you're in the river or the lake, and this has been huge for us, especially this year as I continue to, you learn things every year. So as we continue to learn things, a change in watercolor is absolutely huge. We've had dirty water move in middle of the summer, June, July, and we've caught fish at 10:30 in the morning. If we can find dirty water, we found fish in 10 feet of water, or in like 18 to 20 foot of water, as long as that water is dirty. So definitely, I cannot emphasize it enough. Look for a change in the watercolor, whether you're out on the lake or out in the river. If there's a stream that dumps in, hint, the Bell River, but we have a few of them here. If there's a stream that dumps in, if there's a drainage ditch that's dumping in the river, if we get a hard rain and we get a lot of that runoff, which we've had a ton of in July, look for that change in watercolor, because the fish are much more willing to feed, especially throughout the day, if that water's got a little bit of stain to it. A lot of guys, I get a lot of phone calls at the bait shop after a big storm, like, hey, is the river dirty? Is the river trashed? Is it even worth going out and fishing? Absolutely. I think the only time where it's too dirty to fish, and even then I'm still going to give it a whirl, is when you can't see the trolling motor go in the water. But if that water's got any stain to it, or if that water's got any color, fish it. You'd be really surprised at how much that dirty water will hold fish. And I'm talking fish of all kinds. Now, this has kind of been the year of the catfish here in the St. Clair River. Anytime that water gets dirty, it seems like there's a lot of catfish that push in the system. But the walleyes have been loving it. Whether it's, just south of the boat launch, we always get a lot of dirty water here in Marine City. That's been really good. If you're up north, south of the Pine River or south of the Black River, as those are dumping out and all that dirty water's dumping out, the bait's dumping out with it. So really, really look for a change in watercolor. Another thing you guys really want to look for is temperature change, right? Those walleyes are going to find that temperature change. The bait's going to find that temperature change. Just like in the spring, how we're always looking for warm water because the bait's going to try and, really congregate on those warm water discharges. Again, whether it's the mouth of a river, or like a warm water discharge, or just a spot in the river with some slack current that might warm up a little bit faster. Notice how a lot of these things kind of go hand in hand, right? Some slack water, it's going to heat up faster. It's also, going to hold a lot of that cool water as that cool water comes around in the summer and that river turns over. So you want to look for temperature changes in the water. Salmon guys, I mean, know it from a thermocline, and that's I'm not talking about a thermocline. We're not looking for, when you're out in the lake and you're out on deeper lakes, say you're out on Lake Erie or Lake Huron, you'll actually notice walleye sticking to a thermocline, which is really interesting, especially with the technology with live scope now and active target. No, we're not going to get into live scope and active target. That seems to be a hot button right now in the fishing industry, and it's very annoying. But as the technology changes, you'll notice that, in those deeper lakes, those fish will kind of sit in those thermoclines and those temperature changes. Now, where we are in the river system, those fish aren't going to do that because the current's moving way too fast. Those fish don't want to work that hard all day sitting in a thermocline. Now, if you find slack water, you might find those fish elevated off the bottom a little bit more. But then we notice out in Lake St. Clair as well, typically it's really shallow. I mean, a lot of the spots in the lake, minus the shipping channel, the deepest you're going to find it is like 20 to 22 foot. It's just not deep enough to create like that thermocline. But what you can find is, especially in the summer this time of year, for example, Anchor Bay is going to be much colder than Mitchell's Bay. So there's a lot colder water going in there. There's more of a current blowing into Anchor Bay. So those fish tend to navigate more towards the northern side of the river and the northern side of the lake and sit in that cooler water. So if you guys can find a change in color or you can find a change in temperature, that's going to be the biggest thing. Now, the other thing I'm going to talk about looking for goes hand in hand with both of those, and that's bait. If you're in a spot, whether you're out in the lake or in the river, and you're not seeing a lot of bait, whether it's, you're on a sand flat where there's not going to be gobies and crawfish hiding, or you're out in the lake or you're out on a weed bed and you're not seeing any bait balls or you're not seeing a lot of bait. If you're not seeing bait, odds are the fish aren't going to be there. It just doesn't make sense for them to have to eat like that. It doesn't make sense for them to have to work that hard to find fish. So keep your eye out for bait as well. Those are the three things that aren't really physically visible. You know what I mean? Similar to like how the weed edges and stuff like that are going. Weed edges, rocks, stuff like that. That's more physical. Whereas like, your color change, your temperature change, that stuff could change daily, especially in the river system. The river cleans out extremely fast. I mean, there was that huge storm. I think it was last week. I put my trolling motor in the water and I couldn't see my trolling motor, and 2 days later it was clean blue again. Zebra mussels working hard. That's going to change daily. So when you're out there, don't be dead set on, this was the spot. This is where they were. It is where they were, but it's not where they are. If that makes sense to you guys. So have an open mind as you go into those things. Be willing to move a little bit. Be willing to try and find that open water, because too often I see guys put their boats away. Like that main jigging run ends or that main bottom, the main crawler harness bite ends. And too often I see guys put their boats away, and there's still very good fishing to be had. We had a Facebook post the other day where, the dog days are the best time to catch multi-species, whether it's smallmouth, sheephead, muskies, pike, obviously the sturgeon bites going on. We're here to focus mainly on the walleyes, but you got to understand that, and it just makes sense. Derek, that's perfect, dude. Just go fishing. Go out there willing to learn, willing to adapt, because that's honestly where you're going to find your most success. And like right now, the launches are empty. I drive past Moraine City. I drive past Algonac. There's maybe one or two trucks in the launch, and there's still good fishing to be had. For every bad day you have, you're still going to have 2 good days. And a good day is not going to be a limit in an hour. It's not going to be a limit in 2 hours. But you're going to plug away at fish. You're going to have a good time catching a little bit of everything. So that's really what you guys want to focus on. Let's see. I'm going to hop into the comments here real quick before we pop into the baits section. Whipping. Whipping's still been slow, it seems like, John. But I will say, as I say whipping is slow, I personally haven't been out. And there hasn't really been anybody out. A lot of the times we rely on reports to go out fishing. Those fish are still biting at night. Guys are still getting them off ashore. The big problem with this time of year is the bugs. And the mosquitoes are just so bad. Is it even worth going out there and just getting slaughtered and carried away? If you bring a thermocell or you get a night with some wind, it's definitely been good. I would recommend downsizing your baits. For those of you guys that are whipping, junior thunder sticks, Rapala F9s, even as small as Rapala F7s, Rapala F7s are really good. Downsize those baits a little bit. And you'll have a lot more luck. You'll get more bites. Now, something I will say, and I know everyone here that's watching right now can agree, we've had a lot of short fish in the system. So by downsizing your baits, you're also going to have to sort through those small fish, and there's plenty of them out there, but it is there are some big fish mixed in. And that's one thing about summer that's really funny to me is like a lot of the times in the spring, if you find a big school of fish, there's big fish. Like if you find a school of big fish, then it's mostly big fish. And if you find a school of a bunch of small fish, it's small fish. In the summer, you could crank on, 2 or 3 14 inchers in a row, and then boom, a 5-pounder comes in. So sort through those small fish because the big fish are there. The small fish are just much more aggressive. They're going to be the first ones to the bait. Whatever bait you're using, the smaller ones are going to be there first. Obviously, they're trying to grow. And walleye grow quick. They grow quick because they eat a lot. So that's a big thing with it. Let's see. Did someone say baits? We're getting there, Ed. I promise. And yes, we do have the Misfit custom crawler harnesses. The shelf is loaded up with them. Looks good. And they've been really good blades for us. Really unique patterns from Ed. So definitely check them out. Now, guys, real quick, I'm going to just jump in real quick as we're on the live. We're going to be giving away later on here. We're going to be giving away a bottle of Papa's Pilar rum of your choice. We're also going to be giving away some hats from Whitewater. They've been awesome to work with this whole time. You're going to need to share this live video. Sharing it while it's live would be really helpful for us here at the program, as well as heading over to YouTube to get a bonus entry. You can head over to YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Hook One Fishing. This video will be live tomorrow morning as soon as I get it cut up and edited and onto YouTube. So those are the 2 ways you can win. We're going to pick 2 winners. We'll pick them here at the next podcast. But definitely go ahead and do that. Share this stuff. I really can't thank you guys enough. The support is unbelievable. So thank you guys. So with that being said, and if you guys have any questions, again, plop them in. It'd be great to see. I love seeing you guys answer each other's questions too. It's really cool to see everybody's different point of view on things, and helping out, because obviously I'm only one person and we only fish really one way. So it's really good to see all the help here. Let's make sure the audio's still good. Yep, audio's still good. All right. So let's get to baits. There's a lot of different options. Thank you, Ed. Thank you for the share, brother. I appreciate it greatly. We're going to get into baits. I'm going to show you guys examples of everything, but I'm going to give you a little laundry list of the baits that I really love to use this summer. Jig and crawler is my number one. I'm a jig fisherman. I love to vertical jig. A jig and crawler is very underrated. I probably shouldn't even be giving out the secret because it's astonishing to me how many people don't use it. But it's such a simple way to fish, and it's a way to catch literally everything and continue your jigging success as we keep going. Jason, appreciate you, brother. Appreciate you always. But the jig and crawler is absolutely deadly. We'll get into different sizes and different jigs and stuff like that. But literally vertical jigging, or just kind of not casting, but just pitching out a jig, letting it stay down on the bottom, replicating a bug, making those fish think it's a bug during a hatch, or all summer there's baby lamprey and those little baby freshwater eels and all sorts of bugs down on the bottom that we never see. So a jig and crawler, obviously a crawler harness. We'll talk about the difference of fishing a crawler harness in the river and in the lake, and different ways to present those crawler harnesses. Small crankbaits. I noticed that downsizing our crankbaits leads to a lot more success, and it leads to a lot more bites in the summer. And a big reason is because we can go faster with smaller crankbaits. So we're going to touch on some small crankbaits and some options that we really like to use, especially like on our charters and stuff where we've seen some success. We're also going to talk about glide baits. Glide baits are a big thing. Obviously, the guys with forward-facing sonar have been using them, but long before I had live scope, long before live scope was even a thing, a jigging wrap was one of my favorite baits to use in the summer. It's a great way to get aggressive fish to bite without even giving them a choice. They just get so hungry, and they get so fired up when they see those glide baits. And then we're going to talk a little bit about jig and spoons as well. Jig and spoons were really popular the last couple years here at the store. It seems like they've slowed down a little bit. But jigging spoons, just like glide baits, are a great way to get those fish fired up. The buckshot rattle spoon from Northland Tackle, obviously we have it here in the store, but the buckshot rattle spoon is a very good one. It's got a little rattle in it, so not only does it move crazy, but it also has a really good noise to it. It's got a good knocking sound to it as well. I'm seeing the feed go crazy here, so let's see what we got. Our Misfit lure. Yeah, Kurt, they're right here in Michigan. Great guys, great local guys. We've got them here in the store. It's surprising how many eyes we get on small perch minnows in the summer. It is, Jesse, but that's because a lot of the times that's what they're focusing on are those small minnows. I mean, look at a lot of the bait stores around the area too. All the minnows that we have are small for the most part. Now the big golden shiners are typically not local to the lake, but like the emerald shiners and stuff like that, a lot of them are small. That's because a lot of times the bigger minnows get really hard to find in the summer. Not only are they hard for us to find and the bait catchers to find, but they get harder for the fish to find. So the small minnows in downsizing our baits is going to be key. Smaller crankbaits, smaller swim baits. Now we'll get into it a little bit, but sometimes upsizing your baits, you know, I've watched a couple videos with Hoyer on the National Walleye Tour, and it's been really interesting to see, like, sometimes when those fish won't react to those small baits and that natural bait, he'll upsize his baits, and that we're going to get into that, especially with swim baits. And those fish seem to just go crazy. So sometimes upsizing your baits can be really good, but for the most part, a lot of the times we're downsizing our baits, whether it's crankbaits, crawler harnesses. Notice a lot of the times we use size 4s earlier in the spring and earlier when we pull them, and a lot of times the size 3s, and even like the Indiana blades instead of Colorados, because the Indianas are a little bit thinner. A lot of times those will produce more bites than like the bigger blade and the bigger harness. And again, sometimes you're going to have to sort through those smaller fish when you go with smaller blades. But at the end of the day, like, I'm not going to complain about getting bites, right? Like, I'd rather get bit than not catch fish at all. So let's see. We're getting some really good interaction, guys. This is awesome. This is awesome. Trolling cranks in the river. Fred, I don't troll cranks in the river too much. That's more so a lake thing. There's a few spots on the river where you can troll cranks in slack water, but I wouldn't recommend it because especially in the summer, that when you're trolling in the river, especially if you're trying to stay shallow, there's a lot of weeds. So the small cranks are mostly a lake bite thing. And the rest of them, to be honest with you, the small crank bites are pretty exclusive to the lake in the summer. But everything else, jig and crawler harnesses, jig and swim baits, glide baits, jig and spoons, that stuff that I touched on, you can fish them out in the lake or in the river. And we're going to talk about the different ways as I go through the baits here. We're going to talk about the different ways to present them, the different ways that I really like to target these things. So let's see. Tom, what's up, man? You're never too late. You're never too late. Jason, you ruined it. You ruined my surprise. That was the last thing we were going to touch on, but since you said it, I'll mention it. One of the most underrated baits that I've noticed for walleyes, and a lot of the smallmouth guys will tell you this, and it's funny because I hear a lot of the smallmouth guys that are from out of this area, you know, man, I'm always catching walleyes on drop shots. I'm always catching walleyes on drop shots. A drop shot is one of the most lethal baits you could find in the summer. You can fish it in the river. You can obviously fish it like a traditional drop shot where you cast out, slowly retrieve. You can actually drag a drop shot with the current when you're in the river. You can just let the current kind of push you and drag a drop shot. It's one of the most natural ways to present a bait. You can present a paddle tail. You can present a split tail minnow. You can present a worm style bait with it. The drop shot is absolutely deadly. I know Jason was using them the other day because he came in and picked some up here at the store. But the drop shot is absolutely deadly. So definitely try that stuff out. But let's kind of get into it. Let's get into one of my favorite ways to catch them, and that is right here. It's my favorite way to catch them in the spring. It's my favorite way to catch them in the summer. It's my favorite way to catch them in the fall, and that's on a jig. This here is a simple 1/2 ounce jig. This right here is a Fat Boy Golden Goby. But these jigs with a simple night crawler, all you do is take the night crawler and just thread it right on the hook. You just put the hook right through the head, exactly like you would a plastic. You put the hook right through the nose, push the night crawler up, and if you've got the king crawlers, I usually use baby crawlers on these. You see that? There we go. I usually use baby crawlers on these. I'll either use this style jig here, a wedge style, or I'll use like a moon eye. Some people call it an aspirin head, the moon eye jig, something like that. Those are my favorite ways to present a night crawler. And then what I do is if I have too much of the night crawler hanging off the back, I just clip it off. You only want maybe 1/4 of an inch hanging off that hook. And what that's going to replicate is more of like a bug. And the smaller hooks you can find, this actually is kind of a big hook, but they work really well. But if you can find like a short shank jig or a short shank hook, which we'll have come into the store here probably early in the spring. Northland makes a really nice tungsten one, but if you can find a short shank hook and put just a tiny chunk of worm on there so it looks like a little bug down there, it's one of the best ways to catch them. Now, we use them a lot out in the channels. It's a little bit harder in the river, in the main river. to get away with using, you know, a 3/8 ounce. Half ounce is fine if you're fishing shallow, especially if you're targeting those weed beds in like that 16 to 20 foot range. Half ounce is fine, but we like to use them a little bit smaller, 3/8, even all the way down to a quarter if you can get it calm enough out in the lake and out in the channels, whether it's, you know, out by, you know, for you local guys, if it's out by Grassy or out in the end of the middle channel there, out in the shipping channel, a jig is the way to go. I saw a good question. Kurt, no stingers. I take off stingers in the spring. Stingers are the fastest way to really frustrate yourself and want to just cut your jig off and toss it 3 miles into the lake. And the reason being is the stingers are going to catch all the weeds and all the vegetation that's starting to grow on the bottom. So in the spring, they're perfect because there's not a lot of vegetation. But as summer rolls around, there's a lot more vegetation, but also the water temps are going to be a lot warmer. So those fish aren't going to be as short biting it as much as just kind of hammering the jig. So when those fish are in an aggressive feed, and even in the spring, when I find those fish on an aggressive feed, I'll take the stinger hook off, especially if they're hammering the jig. The stinger hook just becomes something else that the fish can kind of run into, as well as catching snags and vegetation and stuff like that. That's an awesome question, Kurt. But no, take that stinger off, especially on those smaller jigs. Those fish aren't going to hesitate if they think it's a bug or anything like that. They're going to hit it pretty hard. So, but the jigs are a really effective way to fish them a multitude of ways. On our charters, I love throwing the jig because if I don't have clients that are very good at feeling the bottom or they're having a hard time getting that feeling, we catch so many fish, and typically we catch our bigger fish just dragging that jig on the bottom. Again, we're trying to replicate a bug. So those walleye aren't looking at it as like, oh, you know, it needs to be hopping. No, it doesn't necessarily. And a lot of the times you can pull it on the bottom and it will, it'll pin it to the bottom. I mean, you'll feel them just pin that bait right to the bottom. So they work really well. Pitching them out, you know, I've had customers and myself included where I pitch them out, whether I'm on a rock wall or maybe I'm drifting next to a buoy, which is going to create that slack current that we talked about earlier in the episode there. But you can pitch it out. You can kind of hop it back just like you would. You could drop it down and drag it on the bottom. You can vertical jig it. You can fish that jig and crawler a lot of ways. It's a very effective way to fish it and also still have that rod in your hand and have the confidence of having live bait on. Now, a lot of guys that use jig and plastic in the summer, how we tip with night crawlers or how we tip with minnows in the spring, they're going to tip with night crawlers in the summer. I don't know if it's a scent thing. I don't know if it's a presentation thing. It's only a little chunk of night crawler, so I'm assuming it's more of a scent thing than anything. But if you're dead set on using a jig and plastic, you'd be really surprised if you just slide a chunk of night crawler on there. It definitely increases success, and it's going to put more fish in the boat. I mean, plain and simple. It's been tested by me. It's been tested by our customers. It's been tested by good friends of mine. It's a really, really good way to catch fish. And honestly, it's way easier than dealing with minnows. I enjoy it way more than getting my hand in that freezing cold water. I'm dumb and I forget a minnow net all the time, so I'm always digging my hand in the minnow bucket. All right, let's see. Dad. Yeah, man, a drop shot is deadly. It really is deadly all the time. Like you mentioned, it's deadly in the spring. It really is deadly. It honestly is the most effective way to naturally present that fish. I mean, you got to think that how often is a fish going to see something? I mean, and this is a half ounce. So imagine something twice this size attached to a minnow. It's not very natural. I mean, it looks like a dying bait fish. It looks like a limping bait fish as it kind of hops along the bottom. But a drop shot is almost one of the best ways to present, you know, whether, like I said, whether it's a fluke style bait, whether it's a little paddle tail bait, whether it's a worm style bait. I mean, shoot, you can go out there and drop shot a regular night crawler. Just put a chunk of night crawler right on the drop shot, and I think you'd be super surprised how successful it is. So, Tom. Yeah, man, Tom, he knows what he's doing. Tom's got the secrets, I'll tell you what. What's up, Rob? How are you? Guys, please, if you can, share this video. We're going to get into it at the end of it, but if you do, you're going to have a chance to win some rum. You're going to have a chance to win some hats. We got some hats from our friends over at Whitewater. So all you got to do is share this video and head over to our YouTube, Hook One Fishing, and subscribe. This video is going to be live on our YouTube tomorrow morning. I really appreciate you guys. It's really cool to see all the comments coming in here. Keep them coming. It's beautiful. The next thing we're going to talk about, guys, and it's going to be really hard to do this just with one hand, but I'm going to try. The next bait we're going to talk about, and this is going to be specific right now to river fishing, and then we'll touch on lake fishing. But you're seeing me unravel it right now, but it's the deadly bottom bouncer and crawler harness. This is a long harness here. They make them in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. So this one here, you've got the bottom bouncer. For those of you guys that aren't very familiar or want to learn more, we've got the bottom bouncer right here, which is essentially a glorified three-way swivel. Main line goes here. Big old weight on the front that ticks along the bottom. It also stirs up all the dust and all the sand. It makes it look like a bait fish is trying to run around the bottom there. And then we've got the meat and potatoes of the harness right here. Sorry if my audio is getting a little whack, but again, it's kind of hard to do this with two hands. Maybe I need to get a wireless mic. But you've got them right here. So this one here is tied up with a number 4 Colorado. You can see it here. And it's essentially got 2 hooks on the back. Now, we don't have enough time to get into the debate of 1 hook, 2 hooks, or 3 hooks, guys. You can put below in the comments what you'd rather see. Honestly, I become more of a believer of the 1 hook crawler harness. It seems like my hookup ratio is a lot better. I go through a lot less worms. This here's a 2 hook one with, of course, a freaking gold blade on it. There's a lot of colors out there. I mean, Ed's here from Misfit Custom. He's got some beautiful colors. We've got some beautiful Northland colors and stuff like that. But this gold one right here, it's pretty hard to beat a gold blade, especially if there's any stained water. So if you want one color of crawler harness to use, gold. But essentially, guys, this is one of the most effective ways to fish walleyes in the river system. Basically it seems like it's getting earlier every year. This year it was like almost the beginning of May. But it seems like from the middle of May all the way, June is when it really gets good, and you can fish it all the way up until, like I said, we had limits last week with them. You can cover a lot of water. You can present night crawlers with them. And here's a little trick I want to tell you guys as well. I was never really a big believer in using like plastics and stuff like that. I always thought it was really, really hard to replicate like a live night crawler, the scent, the motion, and all that stuff. Wyandotte worms are good. Lure Lipstick makes a really nice ribbon tail worm that you can throw on the back. But these Gulp SR crawlers, there's no way I'm going to pull one of these out of the package in the studio because it reeks. So it's not going to happen. But these Gulp SR crawlers are absolutely killer. And a lot of the times you can throw these on, and it's going to keep a lot of your garbage fish or your little junk fish off. Your small perch, your white perch, your rock bass, stuff like that. A lot of the times in the summer when those fish are more aggressive, you can get away with running plastics or running rubbers and keeping all them little turd fish off. So look into that as well. Maybe just try, typically when you're running crawler harnesses, you're going to be running multiple rods. So maybe run one with a night crawler, one with a plastic. I really do, honestly, I think it's hard to still replicate a live crawler, obviously. They're going to get a lot of bites most of the time. But if you're in a school of fish, if you're in a hungry school of fish, you're sick of dealing with all the worms or all the worm stealers, whether it be little perch and stuff like that, throw on. They make them in 2 different sizes. They make the 7-inch and the 4-inch. And like I said, there's some other options here at the store. The ribbon tail worm from Lure Lipstick's a really good option. Wyandotte worms are a good option. The Bondi worm is a good option. Scent usually helps that. The Bondis have the anise scent. The Gulp worms, they got the Gulp scent. So for those of you that used Gulp, you know what I'm talking about. You probably go home and girlfriend or wife gets all mad at you because you stink worse than the actual fish itself. But the scent really helps out with that stuff. So that's kind of a little hint to kind of stay away or to get away from night crawlers themselves. If you don't like dealing with dirt or even the bedding and stuff like that. But again, this is mostly a river presentation with the big bottom bouncer. Now in the lake, you can pull these harnesses. Where's the other one? Here it is in the cup. This harness here has a number 3 Colorado on it. Notice it's a lot smaller compared to the number 4. So these are really good to use in the summer, especially when we talk about downsizing our baits. The number 3s really, really, they move a little bit easier. They move a little bit faster. And they're, like I said, a good way to downsize your bait. And when you're fishing on the lake, Don't be afraid to use snap weights, inline weights. You know, the offshore tadpoles are a really good way to get them down, because sometimes, especially when you're fishing those weed beds, like if you're along the shipping channel and you're trying to fish those weed beds, a bottom bouncer is going to be really hard to get away with. There's just so much vegetation down there that when you're trying to actually run the bottom, unless you've got a much longer lead that's getting your bait off the bottom, if that makes sense. If you can get your bait off the bottom, then you could run the actual sinker through the weeds. But a lot of the times, if you guys run snap weights or inline weights and just drop them back and run them over the weeds, that's kind of what the fish are keying in on. So that's a really good way to run crawler harnesses on the lake. Where'd that go? I saw somebody ask about silverfish. There are some silverfish. What's up, Frankie? How are you, brother? There are some silverfish moving through the river. The other day I was actually drop shotting, which goes back to the drop shot, what we were talking about. I was drop shotting and I caught a summer scam, which is a scamania. Basically, it's like a lake run steelhead, summer run steelhead. But we caught a few of those. I also noticed a couple Atlantics getting caught when that north wind came in. Keep an eye on that wind, guys, especially you guys that head over to the west side of the state that are jigging those kings or are looking for a good king bite in shallow. And all of us over here on the east side, when we get a north wind, that does wonders. As it pushes cold water through, it does absolute wonders for bringing fish and bringing bait in. I will say this, the last north wind we had brought a ton of emeralds into the river. And it held them in the river for about 3 to 4 days. We had a bunch of emerald shiners in the river, which, as we all know, is fish candy. Whether you're talking about perch, whether you're talking about walleye. Hey, Finn. What's up, buddy? It's National Dog Day. He had to get his FaceTime. But whether you're talking about walleye, whether you're talking about salmon, whether you're talking about perch, emerald shiners are the way to go. So definitely keep an eye on that north wind. If you're going to be targeting them, I would keep an eye on that north wind. But it's interesting, man. The silver fishing in here is interesting. We'll definitely touch on that another day as it keeps going. Let's keep seeing here. I saw one more. Yes, Thad, we'll do a sturgeon show. I don't want to get too much into it right now. Unfortunately, I mean, obviously you can always shoot us a message too. I'd love to chat with you. But we will be happy to do a sturgeon show. Probably do one coming up. I'm going to be honest with you. The pressure on the sturgeon right now is a little crazy in the North Channel. I know everyone wants to get out there and I know everyone wants to catch them, but I don't know if that's a good idea to be touching on right now, especially because there's so many different opinions and there's so many variables and everything that goes into it. What I will say, and what I see here is rods, reels, and line. You're going to want something that's medium heavy to heavy. Guys, don't be going out using light line. You're going to kill those fish. 65-pound braid is the best. And spots, as the DNR keeps doing their research, I think we're starting to learn that they're everywhere. They're out in the lake. They're in the channels. They're upriver. Saw some sturgeon buoys upriver. We've been doing some fishing upriver and catching them as well. But, Thad, I will touch on that. I just don't have time today, brother. I really apologize. All right. How high off the bottom do you fish the drop shots? I'll say this, Derek. It depends where you're fishing. If you're fishing weed beds and you're fishing weeds that are a foot off the bottom, you're going to want that drop shot 18 inches off the bottom. Drag that weed through the weights, and that bait's going to be right over the top. If you're fishing rocks and you're trying to present that bait lower to the bottom, drop that thing down to the bottom. Give it like 8 to 10 inches. And that way you can fish the bottom a lot more effectively. Drop shots are really fun because you can vary a lot of different, you can vary your depths, you can vary your baits, you can do a lot of different things with your drop shots. So like, I know it sounds kind of like a cop-out answer, but you can fish your drop shots a lot of different ways. Just pay attention to what you're fishing on the bottom and where you're fishing. I mean, in the summer we'll drop shot with crawfish style baits, and I'll only have them 6 to 8 inches off the bottom. It's just a little bit better than fishing a jig because I can keep that hook off the bottom, and the craws that we use float, so it keeps them a little bit off the bottom. So that's really nice as well. All right, guys, I'm going to keep rolling here. We got 4 more baits to touch on, and then we'll really hammer the comments section. Again, for you guys just joining, I hate to keep repeating myself, but I keep seeing new people in the comments. For you guys that keep joining, please share this post. You'll give yourself a chance to win some Papa's Pilar rum. They've been an awesome sponsor for us and an awesome partner with us, as well as some whitewater hats. So we're going to be doing a few giveaways. All you got to do is share this video. I prefer for you to share it now so all your friends can tune in. But you can share it whenever you watch this video. And also head over to Hook One Fishing on our YouTube. This podcast is going to be live tomorrow morning. So head over to the Hook One Fishing YouTube, subscribe. I'm going to go through the subscribers list, and we're going to pick another winner. So while we're talking about lake fishing, we're talking about the crawler harnesses and fishing them over the weeds and not dragging bottom as much. Let's talk a little bit about small crankbaits and smaller crankbaits. So we all know about the bandits. We all know about deep husky jerks. We all know about reef runners. We all know about the new Bill Lewis precise walleye cranks that are hitting the market. And we all know they're big baits, right? Flicker minnows 11. They're all big baits. In the summer, guys, downsize your baits. It's going to allow you to, one, match the hatch, which I saw in the comments earlier. Really appreciate that comment. Match the hatch. And also, it's going to allow you to move faster. Sometimes these fish want you moving at, 1.8 miles an hour. Sometimes they want you moving closer to 3 miles an hour. A lot of the times those bigger baits, one, are going to pull a lot harder, and two, they're not going to run true like smaller crankbaits do. So we've got a few options that we really like to use. Obviously, we carry them in the store because we firmly believe in them. But there's a few options that we like to use. Number one is the Berkley Flicker Shad. The Berkley Flicker Shad 7 is probably one of the most popular baits out on the lake. It's popular on all the lakes, really. Lake Erie, Lake St. Clair, Saginaw Bay. It's got a loud rattle, and it's a very, very good bait. You can run this bait slow, you can run this bait fast, and it matches the hatch. So a Flicker Shad 7 is a great bait to run. Similar to the Flicker Shad 7, a similar style profile, but a much different wobble, is the Berkley Money Badger. This bait actually outdid expectations, not only walleye fishing, but this thing crushed salmon for us in the spring. It's got a really erratic wobble. You actually notice the back hook isn't off the tail. It's set under the tail. I think that's what gives this bait such a good action. This bait has a totally different rattle. Notice it's a little bit lower tone. There's some bigger ball bearings in here, which give it a lower tone and a louder rattle. The Berkley Money Badger has caught fish for us really well in the spring for salmon, but walleye fishing specifically, it's caught fish from us from June all the way into December. This is the 6.75 size. It's a really good size bait. Again, it's a really universal bait. You can use this for multiple things. I've used this bait casting for bass. I've used this bait trolling salmon, and I've used it trolling walleyes. They've got some really cool colors in this bait, so the Berkley Money Badger is another really nice small bait to use to really fly through. Another bait that's fairly new to the market, it's more of a minnow-style bait. You can hear the rattle. Kinda. Can you guys hear the rattle? Let me know. But anyway, is the Berkley hit stick, or the Berkley deep hit stick 9. So Berkley came out with the hit stick with a shallow bill, and now they came out with the deep hit stick, which has this bigger bill. Now, the most popular one that everybody's been using has been the, I believe, the 12, but the 9 has been an absolute killer out in the lake and in shallow water. You don't have to run very long leads. This and the Money Badger, you don't have to run very long leads on, which is nice. You can keep them closer to the boat. This is more of that minnow style shape bait, but they've done a really good job with the wobble on it. If you fish it fast, it's got a really, really tight wobble to it. It just looks like it's running right through the water. If you fish it slow, you're going to notice it kind of wobbles more. That's where the bigger bait kind of comes in when you're fishing them slow in the winter. But this Berkley Hit Stick 9 has been an absolute killer for us this summer. And it just gives you a little bit different bait profile, obviously, than like the Flicker Shad or the Flicker Minnow. Now, obviously, the Flicker Minnow 9 is similar from Berkley, but we're all pretty familiar with that bait, where the Flicker, it seems like these deep hit sticks are really just starting to catch on. Guys, it's so hard to keep track of new baits. Like, it seems like there's a new bait all the time, and it seems like they're constantly changing the market, and there's always new stuff coming out. What I will say is there's so much time and money and effort into designing a lot of these baits. They all work. It's just finding ones that you prefer to use and that you have confidence in. We've talked about it over and over and over on our podcasts. You've got to find a bait with confidence. You have to find a bait that you have confidence in, because if you don't have confidence in it, it doesn't matter if I tell you to use it. It doesn't matter if Al Linder tells you to use it. It doesn't matter if anyone in the comments tells you to use it. If you don't have confidence in it, don't use it. right? It only makes sense. But with that being said, there's a fine line because trying new baits and trying new techniques that you might not have confidence in yet might be your favorite techniques or might be your favorite baits moving forward. And then the last small crankbait I want to talk about, we talked about the brand new Bill Lewis Precise Walleye Crank. We actually had a really cool podcast last winter with Jake Romanak, the guys that designed it. But they came out with a new bait, the PWC Light. Now, it sort of looks like I don't even want to say it looks like a reef runner, but it sort of has like that style bill and shape to it. These baits have been awesome. Again, another bait with a big lip on it. You can see how big that bill is, which gives it a really nice wobble. You can hear it's got a little bit different rattle to it. But this, again, is another small bait. It's got a minnow type profile, similar to a hit stick or a flicker minnow. But you can pull these things fast, or you can pull them slow, depending where you're pulling them. But they are a great, great bait to use. And again, effective in the summer. And a lot of the times when you guys are out on Lake St. Clair, if you're just looking to go out and get bites, whether maybe you're going out with some friends that don't get to fish often, or you're taking, a lot of the times I'm taking some kids out, or I'm taking my kids and their friends out, or something like that. Trolling with planer boards is one of the most effective ways to cover water and find fish. And not only catch walleyes, but in the meantime, you'll catch smallmouth bass, you'll catch pike, you might catch a muskie, you'll probably catch a sheephead. Heck, you might catch a catfish out there. You catch everything trolling. And for dive curves on these guys, because all the dive curves are different, I recommend the Precision Trolling app. They've done a really good job. There's a ton of lures on there. They give you the exact dive curve for if you're using 10-pound test, 10-pound Berkeley XT, or 12-pound Berkeley Big Game. It's all about that line diameter. But it's a great app to use. You can tell how deep your lures are diving. You can, if you're fishing 18 foot of water and the weeds are 3 feet up, well, you don't want to fish your baits in 16 foot of water because you're just going to be collecting cabbage all day. So if you're fishing that, then you're going to want to fish, 13 feet down, 10 feet down, because those fish are going to come up off the bottom. You got to think, guys, predators got their eyes on top of their heads, so they're coming up. Thank you for the share, Jeff. Appreciate you, brother. You are in. You might win a bottle of rum. Who knows? This Papa stuff is delicious. We cracked one open with Chase talking about muskie fishing the other day, and I was really surprised. I'm interested to crack into this blonde rum, but that'll be for another day. We had too much to talk about today for me to crack into any rum. Well, let's keep going. The next one is swim baits. We're going to keep going pretty quick. So this is one of my favorite swim baits to use. It's a Kitech 3-inch Easy Shiner right here on a 1/4 ounce. This is a VMC, but any sort of like 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce jig. Notice that this is a slim, skinny jig. Again, we're talking about matching the hatch. A lot of the fish that are running through the system are small fish. So to match the hatch is really good. But sometimes those bigger baits are going to create more bites. It's going to make aggressive fish. Oh, God. It's going to make aggressive fish want to just pound the bait. So that's where I'll upsize. This here is a Lure Lipstick 3.8-inch Pro Swimmer, and they actually make a 4.25 too. Notice, hang on, I'm going to set my mic down here. Notice how much thicker the Pro Swimmer is than the Easy Shiner, okay? See that? The Pro Swimmer is a lot thicker, and I don't know if the camera did a good job of picking it up, but the Pro Swimmer is just one of them. We also carry the Strike King Rage Swimmers, which are a really similar design, or the Kitech Fat Impacts, but something that's a little bit fatter. Now, these bigger baits might just get those extra bites. We'll have these Lure Lipstick Pro Swimmers as early as next spring. I think they're a really good swim bait. They've got some really good action to them, but a lot of the times, these are going to create your reaction strikes, where fish just, they see this big bait go by their face and they just got to bite it, especially bigger fish. If you guys are tournament fishing or doing any of those summer tournaments, sometimes they'll get those bites where like an Easy Shiner is going to replicate that minnow that's just scooting through the water. So, you're going to get more of your natural bites, natural presentation with it. Cody, favorite summer bait for jigging? What'd you say? Oh, man, you guys are killing me. Cody, favorite summer bait for jigging? I think you nailed it. The anchovy worm's been a killer. That purple is really good. Obviously, any of the Hook One minnows. No, I'm just kidding. That's a shameless plug. For summer jigging, I really like to use glide baits, and that's what we're going to crack into next. Let me get these out of the way so I don't get a hook in me or the dog. But as far as plastics go, I like small paddle tails for jigging. I like goby style baits for jigging in the summer. I like to try and, like, again, match the hatch, especially on a system like ours where, like, the St. Clair River and Lake St. Clair is so clean. A lot of times the fish can really eye up the bait before they crush it. So I really like to focus on that. Now, the other thing I really like to jig are these glide baits. And again, the Jigging Wrap is my favorite. This is actually my favorite color. Oh, goodness. A lot of hooks in this box here. Come on. This is my favorite color. This is my favorite bait in general. This is the 5/8 ounce, the number 7 Jigging Wrap in the perch color. Look at this bad boy. You'll notice I clipped the nose off because I don't like it snagging. When I use it ice fishing, that front hook always seems to catch the ice. And when I use it in the river, it seems like it always wants to catch the rocks and the vegetation. So it's just a little modification. But the number 7 Jigging Wrap is a really, really good bait to use for vertical jigging or casting, especially on structure. Now, I don't recommend it around weeds. The big treble hook on the bottom will get hung up. But it's a really good bait to jig, and it's a really good bait to cast out there. And another good bait that we've been really, really happy with and surprised with as we test it, and I shouldn't say surprised, but the versatility of it's really good, and that's this bad boy right here. It's the Berkeley Finisher. You'll see how its face has a little bit of a flatness to it here. That's what gives it the glide motion because it doesn't have the tail. Also, the hook keep on the front and the weighted head is what gives this bait a kind of like a scatter of approach. Now, I like to put these in the glide bait category. There's a lot of baits in the glide bait category. I really like using glide baits in the summer. You can fish them a lot of different ways. Most of the time, very aggressive rips up and then slack lining them down. Now, as you slack line them down, you got to have a rod with some sensitivity and pay attention to your line because they're going to bite as that bait is dropping. Rarely will they bite on the come up, right? You're going to bring that bait up, and as it's falling, they're going to bite. And then when you go to bring it back up, they're there. The glide baits are the perfect way to get aggressive fish to reaction strike. All it does is zip a bait right in front of their face, and they have to chase it. It's in their blood. It's in their body. They're predators. It's what they're going to do. And that's going to go also with the jigging spoon. Now, we don't have any here on this table because I knew I was going to forget something. But the jigging spoons are really similar to a glide bait where you're going to aggressively jig them up, and then you're going to let them slack line, and that spoon's going to flutter down. You're going to get a lot of bites as it flutters down because it's going to aggressively go past their face like it's trying to run away, and then it's going to stop. And it's going to go right back into the strike zone. And as that bait goes back into the strike zone, that fish is down there waiting, and it's going to crush them. And yes, Cody, you nailed it. The buckshot rattle spoon is my favorite spoon to use out there. 3/4 ounce in the deeper water. We use them in the river and in the lake. But 3/4 ounce or 1/2 ounce. I really like the 1/2 ounce. I feel like the spoons fish a lot heavier, if that makes sense. So it feels like a 1/2 ounce will fish more like a 5/8. A 3/4 will fish more like an ounce. It's really because of the shape of the spoon and the way it falls and the way it acts in the water. But they're an awesome bait to use, whether you're using glide baits or you're using jigging spoons. They're one of the best ways to get that reaction strike from those fish. And even when fish don't want to bite, those fish might not even be hungry, you guys. Because a lot of times in the summer, you got to think their metabolism is not nearly, they don't need to eat as much. They're not burning as much calories. They're not burning as much energy as they are in that cold water where they're trying to, like, in the cold water, they're trying to save it. But in the cold water, they're burning a lot more because they're trying to stay warm. Where in the summer, they're warm. There ain't no worries about them staying warm. That water is warm. Like I said, we were out in the lake the other day. It was 75 degrees. So I highly, highly recommend checking them out. All right. That is all I've got, you guys. That is all I've got for summer walleyes. Where to look for them, where to find them, look for structure, look for weed beds, look for temperature change, look for watercolor, and then find out which baits you like to use, whether you're fishing the river or you're fishing the lake, and throw them at them. And again, I've mentioned this 100 times probably on other podcasts, but now that we actually have some people watching and tuning in, when you guys head out fishing, take an hour of your day, 45 minutes of your day. Don't even give it an hour if you don't want. 45 minutes of your day, guys, and do something new. Whether you use a new bait or you fish a new area or you try a new technique, even if you try a color that you don't even believe in, I highly, highly recommend doing something new. Now, that has led me to a lot of days of catching 0 fish, and it's led to me a lot of days being frustrated, but it's also led to a lot of new spots being found and a lot of new techniques that I try. It's just part of the game. We are so used to just going out and crushing fish, whether it be, the walleye run in the spring or and it's different when you only got so much time to go out and fish, because I get it. We all work, you guys all got full-time jobs. We've all got stuff to do. I understand that sometimes we don't have all day to fish, but when you guys schedule yourself, if you've got 6 hours to fish, spend an hour of it doing something new. We talk about it all the time. Ain't that right, Captain Lou? I see you over there in the comments. Don't you worry, buddy. I told him all about the jigging wraps. We got them all lined up in there. But do something new. It's very, very good. It's good for you. It makes you learn as an angler. It makes you grow as an angler. And honestly, sometimes even when you do something new, it might not be your favorite thing, but it might be the difference in having, a ton of success on a slow day. That's something we talk about a lot in the shop, guys, is like, we're so spoiled in this area to have such good fishing and so many fish that when we have a bad day, it's like, oh man, the fish aren't biting. That might not be true. We're just so used to the good times, the 90%. Always be prepared for that 10%. When you tie your knots, tie and prepared for the 10%. When you're picking out a bait, pick them out for the 10%. When the walleye are hungry, they're going to eat anything. You could drop a bottle cap down with a treble hook and they're going to bite it. But what if they're not hungry? This year in the river, we had a really tough jig bite. We had cold water, we had clean water, and sometimes the smallest details made the biggest difference. And we would sit out there on our trips and we would grind out, for 5.5 hours, 5.5 hours, we would grind out a charter and we'd come back with our 24 fish. Sometimes that's what it takes. Now, if I know a lot of the times, whether you're St. Clair River, Detroit River, you don't need that long. But there's days where you do, and I have a lot of guys that'll come into the store at, I don't know, they'll come into the store at 9 o'clock, and the fish aren't biting. Man, I've had some of my best bites this year at like 10 o'clock, 10:30. You'll never pay for a round of golf and only golf a few holes, right? So if you've taken the time out to go fishing, you've paid the money for your baits, you've paid the money for your gas, you're paying the money for your boat, your insurance, all that stuff. Spend the time out there. Learn new stuff. Sometimes the fish just aren't biting. That's fish. That's fishing. You might have a deer on your cell camera for 3 days in a row, and the day you go to sit in the stand, he doesn't come out in daylight. Fish can be the same way. We had a killer night bite this year. And sometimes they didn't bite during the day. What did we do? We had to pull out different colors that I've never even used before up here on the St. Clair River. But hey, they caught fish, and I never would have done it if I wouldn't have tried something new. So if I can preach anything, that's my TED Talk for the day. Try new things. Definitely try new things. I mean, Kevin, he's here in the comments. Kevin's caught just as many walleye as anyone I've ever met. And I've only met Kevin a couple times. And he catches them hand lining and pulling crawlers and jigging. And the guy, he's out all the time. I see him on Facebook going out all the time. He's still trying new stuff. You can't beat it. You cannot beat it. That's the love of the game. It's the love of this sport. So, hey, if you guys appreciated this video, please share it. Give it a like. Head over to our YouTube. So we're going to be giving away some Papa's Pilar rum. Oh, that's a bad one to hang up. It's basically clear on the camera. Jeez Louise. We're giving away a bottle of Papa's Pilar rum to anyone that shares this video. And you get a bonus entry if you head over to our YouTube, Hook One Fishing, and give us a subscribe. Guys, it's only going to help us continue to grow. It's only going to let us do more things, meet more people, interview more people. If you haven't checked out our podcast on YouTube, I highly suggest it. We have all sorts of different guests. We touch on all different topics. Some are fun, some are informative. This is one of the more informative ones that we've done. But they're really fun to do. We have access to a lot of good guys, bass fishing, muskie fishing, walleye fishing. I know Thad mentioned in here, we're going to do a sturgeon episode. And if we like these lives, guys, let me know in the comments. If we want to do these lives, we'll do them at least once or twice a month. I'll sit down and do it. Now, I do have a newborn at home, so you got to give me a little bit of slack here. But our podcast come out every Monday morning at 7 a.m., except for today because I really wanted to do this. I've been wanting to line this up. You guys have seriously been awesome. The comments are absolutely loaded. We have 89 comments from you guys. A lot of it is just you guys helping each other out. It's been super cool to see. You guys are seriously, I always tell people we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for our support system. And our support system are you guys. So again, share this video for a chance to win some rum. Head over to our YouTube, Hook One Fishing. We're going to give you guys a bottle of this rum. We're also going to be giving away a couple hats from Whitewater. Now, for those of you that stayed, I'll tell you guys how to save some money. If you want to try out some of this new Whitewater gear, which you can only get the Hook One exclusive stuff right here in the shop. It's got the St. Clair River logo on the back. But if you guys want to try out some Whitewater gear, head over to their website, whitewaterfish.com. Use the code WWEXUJ5. That it's going to give you 25% off your entire order. 25% off hats, 25% off their rain jackets, their Great Lakes suit, 25% off pants, anything like that, guys. It's really cool. They're doing some really cool stuff to help, not only help us, but help you guys save some money. We know how it goes out there. I mean, we're not stupid. We see prices rising, so definitely check that stuff out. Also, if you head over to Great Lakes Anglers Co., they make fresh coffee. It's Captain Adam. If any of you guys know Real Fishing LLC down there on the Detroit River in Saginaw Bay, Captain Adam started this business. He did it basically to give back. 20% of proceeds go back to the recreational fishermen. We know what the commercial fishermen are trying to do up there on Saginaw Bay, and it's not great. So 20% of all of his proceeds go back to supporting us as sport fishermen and doing stuff like that. And you can save 10%. Use the code HOOK110. The coffee's been powering me through this newborn baby stage. So check that out as well. And if you're out of state, which all you guys are in state, but if you're ever out of state, you can use Papa's 10 to save 10% on an order of rum. Again, thank you to all the people that make this possible for us. Whitewater Fishing, Papa's Pilar, Cortland line, braided line made in the USA. We've got it right here at the shop. If you ever want to check it out, we've got high-vis yellow, their moss green, and their white, which the white's pretty cool too, from 5 pounds all the way up to 80 pounds. And Cortland line is made in the USA. I know Power Pro's good. I know Suffix 832 is good. I can promise you guys will really like that stuff from Cortland. And again, it's made in the USA. Let's support the people that are supporting us. I'll go through the comments one more time before I go get dinner. So if you got anything, guys, please drop them in the comments. Kevin, Mike, I learned more on days that suck. Mike, you spend a lot of time on the water too, brother. So that says a lot. That says a lot. On days that suck, we really do learn the most. We don't necessarily have the best days fishing, but we learn the most. Cody, no, we do not carry the Shiver Minnows right now. Moonshine they sold to Acme Kalins, and it's been hard to get their stuff, to be honest with you. And I really like the Jiggin' Wraps. I think the Jiggin' Wraps do a really good job. Northland makes the Puppet Minnow and stuff like that, but I really, really like the Jiggin' Wraps. Derek, thanks. No, dude, thank you guys. Dan, have a good night, man. Dan from Thump 'em Soft Plastics. That's the one thing. We've got some really good soft plastic makers in this business. We carry a lot of them at the store. Dan from Thump 'em. Lure Lipstick does a good job. Bondi does a good job. He's Canadian, but he's local, small business, so they all do a great job. Dan, thank you, man. Have a good night. If you guys go to the Woods and Water Show, Dan's going to be there with more baits than you'll even be able to comprehend. Grant Hill, dude, what a name. You get a lot of crap for being a Pistons legend. Just kidding. Yeah, we'll be up on Spotify. It'll be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Pocket Casts. Obviously, it'll be up on our YouTube as well, so you can tune back in and hear everything, the who, what, where, when, and why on catching these summer walleyes. Derek, that's what a lot of guys on the west side of the state are saying that are buying the moonshine spoons. I don't know if that's like a guaranteed fact that they went to China, but I do know that it's been really hard to get their stuff, and that was a big reason why we brought Cortland line in the store. Was I had a hard time getting a lot of that stuff that was made overseas, whether it's Suffix or Power Pro. So sticking to those companies that are fairly local are kind of the way to go. Helps us, helps you guys, and a lot of the stuff you can't find in big box stores, which, hey, that's good for Hook One. All right, y'all. That's all I got. We've been on this thing for an hour and 11 minutes. If you missed anything, head over to this wherever you podcast. Head over to YouTube, Hook One Fishing. Last time I'll say it because you're sick of me saying it. Share this post. win a bottle of rum, win some whitewater fishing hats. We will see you next week on the Hook One Pod. Adios.